I can't believe this is actually happening. I don't even know how to do this introduction. Hello again for the first time in what feels like forever. It's been over a year basically. I did upload a video earlier in January, December. It's still been a time adjusting and trying to find time to return to YouTube. So also I just realized I brought the wrong notebook. Okay, now that I have the right notebook, it's been a while. We are gonna start with some semi-redacted life updates. Obviously, like, I don't want to share everything, just the relevant stuff to kind of explain where I've been. Not that I owe anyone an explanation, but I digress. So where have I been? Basically around the time that I disappeared last year, February, March of 2023, I started my first big girl full-time job. Yay, applauso, applauso. Like, this is my first full-time job where it's the only thing that I'm doing. Like, I'm not doing school on top of it. It's just me going to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And that has been such a huge, like, learning curve and a huge adjustment too. I think the thing that I tell people that I like the most about working a full-time job, especially after being in school for so long, is that I love that there's like a definitive start and an end to my work day. Like, I don't have to keep working past basically 5 o'clock or whenever my last meeting is, because I'm not getting paid to do that. And it's just been really, really, really great for my mental health and my overall well-being to have that clear separation of work and life. Like, as soon as it hits 5 or whenever I actually do log out, like, I'm clocked out. Like, a little bit about my job: it's full-time work from home. I'm considered a research associate, but I do a lot of things under that umbrella. So even though I'm full-time work from home, I do travel a little bit. It's still like exhausting. I feel like every single time I get back from travel, I have to catch up with what I missed when I was traveling, and then I'm just so exhausted. And by the time that I finally catch up, it's like I have to go on my next work trip. So it's like, I feel like things are beginning to, maybe, I say this tentatively, maybe they're starting to settle down, but we'll see. Another really big life update is that I did leave my previous relationship and I moved out. When I originally moved to San Diego, I was in a relationship with the person that I moved here with. We are no longer together. We are no longer living together. I am living on my own for the first time as a post-grad adult. I lived alone for a short time when I was in grad school, but this is my first time outside of school just fully living on my own. And while that doesn't seem like a big deal to most, it's a really big deal to me. Like, I'm 27 and I'm fully self-sustained, which is really cool, but at the same time it's like very, very stressful. I know, like, the corny millennial term is that adulting is hard, but there's a lot of weight to that term. Like, the adjustment of having to go from, like, your main focus is school and getting your degree to, like, now I have to sustain my entire life for myself is definitely one that hit me hard, but I think I'm doing pretty well given all of it. Like, I'm quite proud of myself, and I think that's something that if you've gone through it, you should definitely be proud of yourself too. It's not an easy thing. I know earlier generations pretend like it's something that, like, everyone does, it's perfunctory, but even if it's something that you need to do, that doesn't mean it isn't difficult and that you shouldn't be proud of yourself for getting through it. And the last, like, semi-redacted life update that I wanted to give you all is that my mental health journey has been really interesting. I started going to therapy again last year to deal with my anxiety and depression, but recently I've returned because things have been a lot more difficult mentally for me. I feel like a lot of things are just kind of like piling up and it needs to be dealt with. Like, I need to find new coping mechanisms for all of the emotions that I'm feeling. In this return to therapy, I was seen by someone. Essentially, I was talking to them about why I want to go back to therapy, and they were just silent for a little bit. And then they looked at me and they said, "Darling, I don't think you have depression and anxiety. I think you have PTSD that triggers depression and anxiety." And while I've had like a small like inkling in the back of my head that that might be the case, I've always known that I have a lot of like PTSD symptoms. It was really, really life-changing to officially get that diagnosis. So yeah, I've officially been diagnosed with PTSD. That's my alphabet soup for you. I know like that it doesn't really change a lot about what I'm feeling. But at the same time, being able to put a label on it is just, it changes things a lot. I am still like learning about myself with this new diagnosis, because I feel like putting it in the framework of like my depression and anxiety is something that is triggered by an underlying illness, basically. It definitely reshapes the way that I have to think about the way that I take care of myself. So there are days where I just burst into tears from nothing, from absolutely nothing, or I think it's absolutely nothing, and then I look back and it's like, oh shoot, like I was triggered by something. And then some days it's like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I'm strong. I got this. I think all three of those things, those three incredibly big things together has just made it like nearly impossible for me to really make content the way that I used to. As much as I enjoy making content, I had to also prioritize like my mental health, work, obviously. Like, I gotta pay the bills, I gotta make sure this little one has everything she needs. Oh, sorry, Bobby. It's taken me a while to really get my ducks in a row to be able to like consistently make content, make time for it, make mind space, have energy, because it takes a lot on top of like everything else that I'm going through. Like, it's definitely a commitment, but it's something that I really miss and something that I really want to get back into. So I am really looking forward to this next chapter. For the latter half of this video, I just wanted to give you all some reading updates. I will do some stationery updates shortly, but I felt like that should be a separate video since I planned on this one being like entirely sit down talking, and I'm in front of my bookshelf, so why not talk about books? I set my Goodreads reading goal this year to just 90 because my reading has just been in flux, as to be expected with everything else going on. I'm 9 books ahead of schedule. I have read 59 books so far this year. It's July 25th, so I feel pretty good. I think I'm still gonna hit triple digits. So I started reading nonfiction this year, which is very exciting. I feel like it's just been really great to round out my reading with a little bit of nonfiction. I also started reading more comics, graphic novels, and manga. That has definitely helped my reading goal. Not that it shouldn't be counted, but it is definitely faster for me to get through. I think I finally achieved the reading habits of the normal modern day reader with the variety of things that I'm reading now that I've thrown nonfiction and graphic novels and manga into there. So next, I wanted to share some of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. Just gonna talk about them shortly because I think I could talk about these books for forever, but I will just keep it short and sweet. I will say that in the past year and a half since you've last seen me, I have been getting a lot more into like spooky horror thriller reads. I started the Scaredy Cat book club, and it went from like a book club where I forced myself to read one horror spooky novel a month to like that's all I read now. So you'll see that that's very evident in my favorite reads so far this year. The first read I wanted to talk about was The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. This is a classic. It's one of like the very first Gothic stories to have been published. I think it was published sometime in the 1700s. But this was the inspiration for my favorite book of all time, which is Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. And this was just such a fun little romp. I will say, like, out of all of the classics out there, this is definitely more accessible language wise. So if you're like scared about getting into the classics, I actually really recommend this. Not only is it short, like most of this is literally like the introduction and like notes and explanations. The actual story itself is not very long, and the story is so gripping. It's like I remember thinking to myself, well, they didn't have telenovelas back in the 1700s, but they had this. Like, the way that the story is told is very fast paced. Like, there's a lot going on. I had to constantly like be writing in the margins just to like keep track of everything that was going on, because it like there's so much that goes on. I actually, when I finished reading, I sat my partner down and I was like, hey, listen, I have to tell you about all of the things that happen in this book, because it's crazy. It's a crazy ghost story with like a big like revenge plot and hidden identities and that kind of thing. Like it's just unputdownable. I think if you're into that kind of like chisme, like old castle creepy vibes, you're gonna love this. It was definitely right up my alley. Like, I still think about this every single day. And I'll probably end up making like a full-blown video about this, but yeah, highly recommend. My most favorite read of this year, without a doubt. Another book that I really enjoyed is The House Guest by Amparo Davila. This is a short story collection, and it's horror, like light horror, I would say, short stories a la Mariana Enriquez. So if you like Mariana Enriquez, I think you would really like these short stories. I was blown away by this. I think there is the perfect balance of literary horror, where it's like that feeling of just uncomfortableness, and then like actual like gory horror, or not necessarily gory, but like scary horror. Those are what the two tabs are. Like, some of it is literary horror, some of it's actual horror, and I think the balance was just struck so well. Like, some of these stories, like, I think about them every single day. My favorite, I think, has to be Moses and Gaspar. The way that Davila creates this sense of uncomfortableness by not naming things, I think is so powerful. Like, that's what I like about things like cosmic horror. The horror, the scariness of the unknown is something that I think definitely gets me a lot. In literature, I think that that's just the most thrilling kind of horror, because when you're reading, so much of the experience of reading is like you just being in your head. And so having this like giant unnamed question mark like kind of enriches the reading experience, if that makes sense. So yeah, highly recommend. I had to check if I was recording because I'm using my phone right now and I don't even see like the next books-ish, book and a half that I want to talk about are A Certain Hunger and An Excellent Host by Chelsea G. Summers. An Excellent Host was a novella that was published for Independent Bookstore Day, so I got this during the San Diego Book Crawl. But Chelsea G. Summers is definitely a new favorite author for me, even though I've only read like 1.5 books by them. Both of these books, like, I think about them all the time. I just can't stop thinking about A Certain Hunger. Like, how do I even describe this book? So basically you're in the head of, or actually I'm not sure, maybe it was like letters or something. Like, the narrator is telling you about her story of how she landed herself in jail, from jail. And let's just say, actually, no, I should tell you guys up front. It's cannibalism. The way that it's described and seeing the story unfold from like when she first like realizes that she's a cannibal to like the crescendo of her cannibalism basically is just so fascinating. And I know like that's like the worst reason to enjoy this book, but it captured me. I can't stop thinking about it. And I think when a book takes up that much space in your mind, it deserves some accolades. For An Excellent Host, so I was a big Greek mythology girl. I still am, really, but Ever since I read Percy Jackson in middle school, like even through college, I was studying Greek mythology on the side. Like it's a big part of me. And by far and away my favorite story is the story of how Dionysus's followers rip apart a man. Essentially, this is a modern day retelling of that story. We love a crazy girl, a group of crazy girls tearing apart a man, okay? If you know, you know. Those are like my top reads of this year. They are so twisted. They're so... Am I okay? No, I'm not okay. Like, we've already established I'm not okay. And we are only about halfway-ish through the year, so I didn't want to talk to you guys about 3 books that I'm really excited to read, and I am like definitely 100% going to read. I'm holding myself to that. The first one is Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics by Mark Lamont Hill and Mitchell Plitnick. I picked this up while I was at a conference, actually. By the way, if you go to like educational conferences, like in academia, like academia conference, I have no idea how to categorize it. Anyway, if you go to one of those conferences, sometimes publishers of like nonfiction or academic books will have like booths, and they will have sales on their books. And so I got a lot of books at a conference, and this is one of them. This is incredibly relevant. I learned about what's happening in Palestine, like really educated myself on it way back in 2019. But I've heard that this book is a really good way to contextualize what's going on in the broader terms of like why this has been so difficult to handle politically. So while I have that knowledge of the history of what's going on and why it's happening now, like kind of grappling with the idea of how my country and history has played a role in it, I think is a really important next step. So really excited to expand my understanding with this book. Another book that I'm really excited to read and is kind of like an extension of me in my spooky girl era is Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. I've been so excited to read this book ever since it was announced, but basically the gist is that this couple, their son passes away when he's very young. In mourning, they keep a little piece of, I think, his lung before they bury him. And for some reason, the lung like starts to grow, and they just kind of like nurture and keep the lung, and they name it Monstrilio. And I think that I'm just like, first of all, the idea of that is super interesting to me. I think in battling grief, this is going to be a really good exploration of that. So I'm ready. I'm ready to be emotionally wrecked by this book. The little monster, he's so cute. The last book that I'm excited to read, because apparently I'm back in my classics era, is Lodore by Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley is the author of Frankenstein. I love Frankenstein. Frankenstein is like one of the best masterpieces to have ever been put on this earth, in my humble opinion. And it is a travesty that before this book, that's the only work of Mary Shelley's that I've ever read. So I'm really excited to pick up Lodore, because I didn't know about this title until I saw it at Barnes & Noble. Look at the cover. She is so gorgeous. Apparently this is not a horror or science fiction at all. On the back, it's being compared to a Jane Austen era Regency romance. So I'm hooked. No matter what happens in this book, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna enjoy it, because Mary Shelley's writing and her understanding of the pain of human existence is just, it's bound to come through. Very excited for this. Welcome back to my classics era. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. I feel really good right now. Like, I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to like share my life with you guys a little bit. Before I say goodbye, I did want to ask if you made it to the end of this video. Obviously, like, there's content that I want to make, but in case like you're an old viewer or even a new viewer, is there like a type of content that you want to see from me? Like, do you want to see more stationery stuff, more bookish stuff, lifestyle stuff, just like gauging what y'all are interested in. I have tons of ideas, like trust me. I have tons of like, what do you think this notebook is for besides to look really cute? Y'all are my friends, and at the end of the day I'm here for y'all. So if you have something you'd like to see from me, just let me know. And with that, I shall bid you all adieu. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.